Jacob N. Carter. And Jacob is the author of a new book, The Riptide, The Untold Stories of Those Who Are the Undercurrent of the Alabama Dynasty. Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning. I appreciate you having me on, and it's an honor. I love your show.
Well, I appreciate it. Good to have you on. Let's get right to it. I think your book came out last month, so it's brand new. Where did the motivation come from to write this book, and exactly what is the book about?
Yeah, well, the motivation came from kind of watching the ESPN show 30 for 30, the documentary series. They did one on the USC Dynasty, and I felt like that maybe the Alabama Dynasty wasn't being captured as well right now, and I feared that maybe later on it wouldn't be as fresh in some of the players' minds. So that was kind of the motivation. I wanted to reach out as a lifelong fan and kind of give back to the program in some sort of way by letting the fans deeper into the program, and so we can enjoy it more.
You know, the book is a different kind of look. I mean, obviously you have to have star players, highly touted recruits, but you also get into the fact that it isn't just those guys that allow a program to be successful. It's other players maybe who play smaller roles, maybe walk-ons or guys that are scholarship players who have just hung around and been backups their whole career, that are scout team members during the week and prepare the starters to play. It takes all of those guys buying in to build a dynasty, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that's the whole thesis of the book. You know, the riptide in the ocean is a strong undercurrent that's not seen, but it really carries a lot of weight as far as the whole ocean into the deeper sea. And so there's a lot of stories there within the Alabama program, and we all know, like the A.J. McCarrons and the Trent Richardsons and those people, but these other guys push those guys throughout the week. And I believe that even if you ask Coach Saban, the scout team guys and those walk-ons and players like that are just as important as the starters. And without those guys and their stories, you really can't tell the whole Alabama program, or Coach Saban's system really doesn't work if you don't have the walk-ons and the scout team players and those type guys throughout the week doing their own job too. So that's kind of the angle I wanted to hit, because there's not a lot out there about those types of players or their stories or what their experiences were like.
And you do interview some well-known players, too. Lorenzo Washington, who was a highly touted player out of high school that signed with Mike Shula, but was here when Coach Saban got here. Same for Roy Upchurch. Eric Anders, he inherited him. He became a great player. Jalston Fowler's in the NFL with the Titans, and those guys were key contributors to national championship teams. But you also, for instance, Ben Howell, who was a walk-on running back from nearby Gordo High School. Ben Howell pushed those other guys, and without Ben Howell, they might not have had the success on the field that they had. What he was, as you said, the undercurrent of the program, guys like him and Alan Skelton that really, really did a lot of work that went unseen.
Yeah, and they not only that, but I believe, you know, there's a story in there that Ben Howell tells. Courtney Upshaw, when he came back to Alabama for the spring game the next year, he thanked Ben Howell while Ben Howell was still at Alabama about how hard Ben Howell had pushed him in practice. While he was there, Courtney Upshaw said it made him a better player. And, you know, Roy Upchurch, who's in the book, he was able to teach Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson not only the different plays and the angles they should take as a running back, things like that, but he also was able to teach them the psychology of the game, how to handle themselves as young men and having success. So a lot of these guys, even a player like Lorenzo Washington, who's a bigger name within the program, a lot of these guys have stories within the book about how they did fit into the program and how they each played a role in Coach Saban's system, and how important it was for them to kind of be a leader. And I really think that's something about Coach Saban's program a lot of people don't realize. Each person on the team is a leader. So you have the leadership council, but each person on the team is held accountable, from the walk-on all the way to the quarterback.
You know, when you research and do a book like this, Jacob, and I've never written a book, but I'm in broadcasting, I've written newspaper columns, anything that you do that is written takes some research and takes some time. I can only imagine when you're researching for a book like this and contacting people for interviews and going through this process, You find out a lot about the program that the normal person doesn't know, and I know that's part of the reason you did the book, to share those stories. But what all did you find out about Alabama football under Nick Saban that you didn't know, and maybe something that surprised you?
Right, and that's a great question. And there is a lot of research that goes into it, but that's the reward in it too. And I think some of the things I found out is I found out more so that these guys are human beings, and a lot of the times, I grew up an Alabama fan, and a lot of times there's this kind of mystical feeling about the program. We expect these guys to go out and perform at a high level, and every week in and week out. But the truth is they're human beings, and they sacrifice a lot in what they do for the program, and a special type of person is what it requires to play in Coach Saban's program. So I found that out, and I think I found out a lot about Coach Saban too, and about how he deals with people personally. I really think Coach Saban is a misread person. We see him on the sideline with Lane Kiffin, these type things, and we think, oh man, he's such a hard dictator. But when you get into the book and you hear these stories about who Nick Saban is and how he interacts with these guys, how he helped their life, how he mentors them as young people coming out of high school and they leave them in, I think you really see a more of a loving person than you do of a dictator. And I don't think you could be as successful as he's been if you're not a good leader. And so, I think people overplay how much he explodes and all these things. I think the man is running a business, but at the same time, I think anyone who's played under Nick Saban has left a better person for it. And so, that kind of insight to personalize the program was my reward in doing the book.
Talking with Jacob M. Carter, author of The Riptide, The Untold Stories from Those Who Built the Alabama Dynasty, available in paperback this past August 17th. It's available on Amazon.com. We'll talk with him later about other places that you can get the book. Really interesting read. As we were discussing, it's about the fiber of the program, not just about the stars, but about what goes on in the inner workings, some of the guys who push the top stars to be their best, and really is interesting. And you even talked with Keith Pugh, the former Alabama wide receiver under Coach Bryant, who is now a pastor here in Tuscaloosa, because you make the analogy that for Alabama to ever get to the point where it could hire a Nick Saban, you had to have tradition and you had to have excellence in the program. Of course, even before Coach Bryant, there were championships, but having a Coach Bryant kind of paved the way, you say, to be able to hire, from Al Moore to be able to hire Nick Saban.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I wanted to fit the Bear Bryant area there and Pastor Pugh in there too, because it's very important to understand the history of Alabama football to be able to enjoy them in the present day. And so, yeah, the whole thing is, about the riptide and the undercurrent in the ocean, what causes Alabama's success. And for my generation of younger people, we might not appreciate, if it's not for Keith Pugh, if it's not for Bear Bryant, Frank Thomas, and Coach Wallace and some of these guys, there wouldn't have been the pressure there from Al Moore to hire Nick Saban. And now we're in this new dynasty, and we're all enjoying this. But if you don't respect and appreciate the work those guys have put in the past, then you really don't have the modern day dynasty either. You can't appreciate it as much. And so, I think I asked Pastor Pugh in the book, who's the greatest coach of all time, Bear Bryant or Nick Saban at Alabama, and of course he chose Bear Bryant, but he said Nick Saban's not far behind. But also he made a point that you really can't make that comparison because they're all one. This whole storyline of Alabama is all one storyline. And so it's really not about who the greatest is. It's about, the University of Alabama and what they brought to the table. So I completely stand behind that. Without Bear Bryant, you don't have Nick Saban.
Great point. Talking to these players, all of them, I'm sure you found out some things you didn't know about Alabama football. What are some memorable moments or stories that you were told by these players that stand out?
Yeah, I think some of the more memorable ones. There were some of the funny ones, like when Alan Skelton first came on campus, he was trying to impress Coach Saban, and his knee brace got locked up with another lineman's knee brace and knocked them both down right when Coach Saban came by for the first time. And, Nick Saban the next day told him, said that he told Alan that he needed to hide from that sniper that took Alan and his friend out, too. And it's these type things like, because Alan was horrified that he had blown his opportunity or whatever. Nick Saban played it off with humor. And I think for me, the moments that mean the most are the ones like with Roy Upchurch, where, Roy Upchurch is kind of coming to an end of his career, and everyone knew he probably wouldn't go pro, wouldn't make it in the pros. And so Nick Saban pulled him aside and said, Roy, these are your strengths as a human being. This is what I see in you. These are what your strengths are, and so I want you to pursue these things. And now Roy Upchurch is an assistant strength and conditioning coach of South Carolina, based on those talks that Nick Saban had with him. And, one of the moments, too, is after the Louisiana-Monroe game, Nick Saban's first year, Eric Anders went to Nick Saban and told him, I think we, as a team, we've lost focus on, the process, and we're too focused on beating LSU and Auburn and these teams. We need to get back to that. And Nick Saban listened to him, and Nick Saban listens to his players. And for those people who think he's a dictator, the humility it takes to listen to your own players who are 19 and 20 when you're 65 years old, it takes a lot. So those were some of the favorite moments in my book, those moments where the program becomes more than just Alabama football and TV on the Saturday, and you realize, man, this is people's lives. This is people who've trusted Nick Saban. These are the guys who really didn't have a shot at the NFL, and Nick Saban still cares enough about them to go to them and say, hey, I know your strengths. I got the game plan for you, and I'm going to fulfill my promise to you that I did when I recruited you. And that stuff means a lot to me as a fan.
Oh, no doubt, man. That is really good stuff. As you said, it is the Riptide, the undercurrent, all the things in the program that we don't necessarily see that Alabama football is about. What in your opinion makes Alabama, you've mentioned some of the reasons I think already, but what are some of the things that make Alabama football, the program, different from a lot of other programs and special?
I think one of the questions I asked each player in my book was, if I was a young recruit and I was considering what school I would go to, why would I choose Alabama? And I asked them each of that question on purpose, and because of the question you just asked me, and they all had different answers for it. But what makes Alabama different than every other program is, I think it's a mixture of the tradition that Alabama has is unmatched. And I think, too, you have two dynasties within one program, which is just amazing. But what makes it different, too, is Alabama football is a part of everyone's life in Alabama. As you know, it's embedded in people's culture. I mean, Mike McCoy, when he came on campus, said in the book, he was shocked. He couldn't believe how deep it was and how important he was to everyone. And Eric Anders said he couldn't believe it. When he stepped on campus, people knew his name, his 40 time, his bench press. And he just couldn't. These players were overwhelmed by it, but they grew to love it too. And so Alabama is separated not only for their success, but they're separated for what they've done for people and what they represent in the state. And I think that's kind of what I'm saying. The Riptide, I said in my book, is not only the players, it's not only the coaches, it's also the fans. The fans do so much for the program. They are the reason that some of the recruits have gone there, the whole culture. So there's a lot of things that go on in Alabama football every day that we don't even see. And I think the fans are a big part of that too.
Well, it's very interesting stuff, and you've got an interesting story as well. I mean, you're an author. This is your second book that you've published, but you also came through a drug addiction, and now you're an alcohol and drug counselor and help people getting their life straightened out. That's an interesting personal story that you've got to share.
Yeah, and I tell people all the time, for me, I take I take zero credit because I'm a Christian, and I wasn't for years. And so, like, for me, had Christ not changed my heart, had not opened my eyes, I never would have listened to anybody in the first place. And then to tie into the book, why this is personal to me is I've had a mentor in my life. His name's Pete Orta, and he runs a program in Texas called In Triumph. And he's mentored me and discipled me one-on-one for years. And I had a man take me under and teach me how to have principles and discipline and to be a godly man. And that mentorship to me meant so much. That process that he works in the program, I really can relate to these guys with Coach Saban. And that's what Coach Saban is. He's a mentor to these young men, and I had that in my life. But most of all, I give the glory to God because I couldn't have done it on my own. And if anyone's out there, so because God can change anybody. If He changed me, and He can do it through a number of different circumstances. And so Christ forgave my sins and gave me a new heart, and I couldn't be more grateful for it.
Well, the Riptide is certainly a different take on Alabama football, the untold stories of those who are the undercurrent of the Alabama Dynasty. Jacob N. Carter is the author. Thanks for joining us this morning. Tell folks how they can get the book.
Yeah, you can get it on, we do an online publishing company, so you can get it on Goodreads.com or Amazon.com. You can get it in Kindle format or paperback. Also, people can contact me, via social media, and or they can contact my publisher at WordCraft Press in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have signed copies too available.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Enjoyed it.
All right, thank you.